Hi! You asked me a lot of questions about working with epoxy resin, so those who watch my videos simply for pleasure will need to be a little bit patient, because this video is going to be technical theoretical. But you can also watch this video to better understand what I do. I will leave the timecodes below, so you will see what we're going to talk about in this video. And if you're interested in something concrete, you can click and watch the moment you need. In this video, I tried to answer all of your questions about silicone molds. What kinds of molds exist, where you can get them, why are some of molds matte, how do you work with matte molds, how do you wash them, and lots of other information. In a nutshell, everything I know is what I've learned from my own experience. These are all my silicone molds I have for today. It took me 4 years to get them. Most of the molds are meant for polymer clay, cooking, chocolate and fondant. These days, molds for resin are more and more produced. You can use all types of molds working with resin, but there is one big difference. Most of the molds for resin and chocolate leave a glossy finish, but molds for polymer clay and ice are matte, and the finish directly depends on the mold. For example, this mold is for resin, and it's glossy inside, so the surface of resin will also be glossy. Or have a look at this example, but we will talk about these molds a bit later. And this mold is for polymer clay. It is matte inside, and it also gives a matte finish. For instance, I used it for liquid plastic. Here is a fence and a dolphin. You can compare them. One is for clay and the other one is for resin. These transparent molds are terrible. I don't advise taking them. Their material differs from the silicone, which is usually used in molds, and it is really difficult to take your artworks out of them. They stick to them so hard that no soapy water, no oil, nothing will help you. And some tiny details won't survive these manipulations. With all my forces, I finally managed to carefully take everything out, although I had to cut the mold into pieces, and then with the help of these resin rings, I made my own silicone molds. To my opinion, such semi-transparent molds are the best. They can become kind of hazy, don't really know why, but it doesn't affect the result. There are also such molds, and they are super glossy. And if you accidentally made a drop, the resin would flow into the deepening of your mold by itself. These molds are awesome, but when you buy molds, it is hard to predict which silicone they are made of. You don't need to apply anything on the surface of silicone molds before casting, because it won't let resin harden right, or it may also leave some accidental bubbles or smudges. If there are specks of dust on your mold, or it is completely covered with dust, you need to wash it. Otherwise, this dust will remain in your artwork. It's better to wash molds with detergents. It can be liquid soap, shampoo, shower gel or dishwashing liquid. After giving them a good wash, leave them to dry on their own. Don't use any towels and tissues, because they can cause our enemies – specks of dust. When your molds are dry, you can either get to work, or if you don't intend to work, I advise you to put the molds into a plastic pocket or into a pinched pocket to keep them perfectly clean till the moment of casting. Now let's speak about how we can make silicone molds. There is a cheap variant to make it of sealant, and there is an expensive variant to use professional materials. In one of my videos, I already made silicone molds from sealant, and what I can say is that it was kind of success. I will try this silicone and this silicone sealant. First goes the sealant. There is a variant to do it with soapy water. For this you need to take water, add enough of any liquid soap, and then add the sealant. We need soap to make some kind of a protective coat on sealant, and supposedly after that the sealant won't be sticking to anything. And remember that you need to apply soap on your hands and on the thing you want to turn into a mold, otherwise the sealant will stick to them, and it's difficult to wash it off, so I decided to put my gloves on. It is also possible to mix sealant with starch. I haven't found what the ratio is, so I mixed everything approximately. I stir it well and dip the model in, and begin to wait when everything will dry up. The sealant with starch didn't manage to save all the tiny details. The sealant with soap stuck to model anyway and broke. What have I done wrong? I took some silicone and repeated these two techniques, but with glass cabochons. Soap will be the first, and here I covered one cabochon like this, and the second one I covered with Vaseline. I did the same with starch. This time I added more starch, so it was possible to mix everything without gloves. One cabochon is with Vaseline, and the second one is without it. Let's see what we will get. The silicone stuck to cabochon. The silicone and Vaseline stuck to cabochon. But the silicone with starch gave a better result. At least I managed to unstick it. Not perfectly though. But I will try to cast this mold anyway. The sealant, starch and Vaseline gave the best result. But the mold is not glossy at all. No matter what you do, you will get only matte effect working with such a mold. One more interesting variant is to make silicone molds with the help of hot glue. I attached the elements to the sticky surface of the masking tape and began to pour clay. The only difficulty here is connected with air bubbles, which appear inside and don't come out. These molds harden pretty fast, and it is easy to unstick artworks. When you cast such a mold with resin, the result is also quite alright, but the air bubbles ruined everything. If you want to pour silicone using glue gun without appearing bubbles, you need nerves of steel. The next variant is such silicone paste from an Italian producer. This material has a higher level than previous materials. You need to mix 2 parts of paste in 1:1 ratio. The paste doesn't stick to hands, and even if you put it on something and it starts spreading over, still it will be very easy to unstick it. The paste is easy to wedge, and you need to wedge it into the homogeneous color and then dip a model into it. That's it. All we need to do is to wait till it's dry. It is written on the packaging that it dries up for 15 minutes, but my artworks never dry up in 15 minutes, so I left it for half an hour. It is very smooth and even below, and in the front everything is quite alright. Do you see how clearly the edge of our workpiece is visible on this mold? However, there is no glossiness in it. That's a pity. But it will perfectly suit those who like sculpting with polymer clay. And the most professional variant is modeling silicone. It's easy to work with, but as it is a serious material, the price is serious as well. You need to mix the silicone and the hardener. The ratio in the instruction is 100:5. But in such a case, it hardens too fast and it's difficult to stir everything well and then pour it inside a mold. It starts hardening at the moment of pouring, and as a result, you have a mess with bubbles. It is written in the instruction that it's possible to mix it in 100:3 ratio, so it will increase a little the time of thickening and we will be able to cast it better. That's why I always choose 100:3 ratio. But first, we need to find a mold with flat bottom into which we are going to pour silicone and place our model. You can attach it using hot glue or double-sided tape. I mix the components together and pour the silicone on the rings. If to compare to the previous materials, the advantage of this liquid material is that it evenly spreads over the whole surface below, and as it is a liquid, it also evenly spreads above. To sum up, we get a mold with even bottom and even surface above. Make sure you have knocked out all the air bubbles, because they can accidentally appear when you mix the components. Such silicone perfectly copies the surface of the thing on which you pour it, so when we cast resin into silicone mold, we get an exact replica of the casted thing. You can cast several figures at once, so that you will get all in one mold, and it will be possible to make, for example, the whole collection at a time. The most important thing is to find figures of the same height, otherwise you will waste quite a lot of silicone. My piece of advice to you is to stop torturing yourself with these domestic methods. If you work professionally with epoxy resin or polymer clay, it will definitely be better if you buy good quality silicone. Sure, it will be expensive, but you will save your time and nerves. Also, the molds made with the silicone will last longer. Plus, there is one more variant. Your figure might get stuck to sealant, and eventually it won't be possible to use it anymore. And I'm not always ready to sacrifice my single copies of something. If you want to save money by buying only one mold and then make its silicone replicas, it will be better if you buy as many molds as you need at once. If you need to make a single silicone mold and if you have a glue gun right away, try using it. But take the cheapest glue, because as a rule such cheap glue doesn't stick to anything. It hardens and then easily comes off the surfaces. But first, it's better to try your glue on any tiny thing. If you like experiments or doing something new, if it is a hobby for you, your pastime, you can also use those domestic methods, why not? And maybe it's possible to bring them to perfection by wasting your nerves and figures on them. If you use the sealant and silicone sealant methods and you have no problems with them, that's cool, so please write in the comments about the nuances that you know and what I do wrong. I'm sure this information will be useful to somebody. And I hope my video today was also useful for you. I love you this much. Bye!